Hello, BookTube. Try this again. Phone keeps shutting off. I'm here to do a tag. I have a tag by Steve Donoghue for the Anthropod book tag, originally done by Rambling Raconteur. So let's get right to it. So I'll try to do it quickly as possible. Number one, some insects are critical to our global ecosystem because they transfer pollen between flowering plants, stimulating biodiversity and the reproduction of these species. What is a book that has pollinated your reading life and helped you restart reading? Now, I don't really have anything specific that's like that because I've never restarted reading. I've always, since I started, I've continued. I have had periods where I didn't read as much, but I can't think of anything that was one specific thing that started me back to reading a whole bunch. The thing that I could think of is rereading George Orwell about 14 years ago. And that has sort of been a continuous thing because I have his complete works, 11 volumes that I'm still working through, as well as other secondary material, biographies, other studies of his works. So that'll be my answer for it. I'm cheating a little bit there, but I can't think of anything else. Number 4, is there an insect you find particularly interesting? Actually, several. Butterflies, moths, praying mantis, and those black beetles that have the hard shells, and some of them have sort of like elephant-like tusks on them, and they're from very small to quite big. Number 3, many arachnids create webs to trap their prey. What is the work that really stuck to you and drew you into its world? Now, it'll be this one here. God's Graves and Scholars, A Story of Archaeology by C.W. Saram. I'm going to have to put it down because it's very moldy, musty, setting off my allergies. I can't even read it. I have to wash my hands after I'm done this, but it's on my pile for charity shop. But anyway, that started my deep interest and a basically lifelong interest, even though there's a gap now, I haven't read too much, of ancient history and archaeology. And there was one other book that prompted me to go to university, which was Michael Wood's In Search of the Trojan War, that accompanied with the TV series. So yeah, that's definitely are very important things to me. Number 4, the myriapod, millipede, derives its name from the belief that it has 1,000 legs, when in reality most species have fewer than 700. What is a work that had a high page count but felt much shorter as you read it? Rabelais' Gargantuan Pantagruel. It's over 800 pages, if I remember correctly, in the Penguin edition, but it didn't feel like that. I read it through very quickly, and it didn't seem very long. And I've read it a few times. The first time was almost 30 years ago. I just thoroughly enjoyed it. I love every page of it. Number 5, the scorpion is an infamous arachnid with a venomous stinger on its tail. What is a work that stung you with its ending? Now, Steve regaled us at length with several times he's been stung by scorpions, so I will not relate my stories because they almost pale in comparison to his. But yeah, a book that's... The one that comes to mind is Isaac Asimov's Foundation on Earth. It's the last of the book, or is it? Yeah, it's Foundation on Earth, I believe. Yeah. Anyway, the final book in the series. It was sort of talked about the way of the big reveal at the end, but it was like when I first read it, I went, "Whoa!" But I never, Asimov never lived long enough to explore that. Some other writers did a interwoven trilogy from the original, like the Gregory Benford. I can't remember the other ones. Did some other books in between, and they took some of that idea, so they brought it back to the original. But anyway, but yeah, that would be the book that definitely had that kind of ending for me. Crustaceans are a diverse subphylum of arthropods that live in water. Name a work that makes you think of the sea. Immediately, it's always going to be Lord Jim. It's not always set at sea, but it is a sailor. And other works by Joseph Conrad, but definitely Lord Jim makes me think of the sea. As well as, but that's a novel, but there's short stories I used to read of John Masefield that were sort of sea stories, short stories. But I can't remember any specifics. It's Lord Jim, so that would trump all that. Oh, shouldn't use that word. Should be a word in vain. 8. Is there an arthropod that you are afraid of or concerned about? Oh, sorry. No, let's back up. Number 7. The trilobites flourished in the oceans before going extinct in the Permian mass extinction. Who is a writer that will not produce any more work and that you believe was influential but is now sadly neglected? There's a couple, but I'll start out with Arnold J. Toynbee, his massive study of history, 10 volumes. I think he's coming back into interest. I won't say vogue, but interest now. When I was reading him, first of all, in the 80s, he was not looked upon well. He was a historian, an economic historian, and he put the he used sort of historical method on everything that he looked at, whether it be economics or anything, and he coined quite a few phrases. I'm trying to think. I'm pretty sure he coined the Industrial Revolution. But he's like he had a grandiose theory about how the cyclical nature of history, and so he wrote this massive history, and it's been derided, and people saying that he was leaving stuff out that didn't work and everything. But it's an interesting theory, and it's probably an almost impossible thing to prove. But I like the method that he used. I like reading his book, and then the footnotes are just amazing as well. I haven't read the whole study of history. I've only read some of the first volumes, but it is something that I do want to get back into reading it all someday. Now, number 8, is there an arthropod that you are afraid of or concerned about? And that would be all the ones I said in question number 2. Butterflies, moths, praying mantises, and the beetles. But butterflies, they're where they migrate to for sort of winter time in many areas, like in North America. They go down to South America or Mesoamerica, and these areas are disappearing or have disappeared. And all over it. I think the same is in Africa as well for European ones. Number 9, ending on a high note. Some arthropods. Let me take my tongue and my teeth out and rearrange them. Ending on a high note. Some arthropods, like the butterfly, undergo an extraordinary metamorphosis. The fully grown butterfly soars over the ground that the caterpillar scuttles across. What is a work that opened your mind and helped it take flight? Now, there are several things. Like, I could easily reuse this one, but I will use combination of documentary and a book is Carl Sagan's Cosmos, because he brought in like anthropology, archaeology, ancient history, zoology, biology, cosmology, chemistry, physics, every discipline pretty well was in there, and it sort of opened my mind that things don't have to be pigeonholed. There is a relation between all these disciplines, And in order to understand any one, you've got to, in some ways, understand some of the other, or all of the others, to at least a lesser or greater extent. And then his other book that I read later, and I read it twice, I think, in pretty quick succession, is Dragons of Eden, Speculations on the Evolution of Human Intelligence, which I found just fascinating. Another series that was sort of similar to something like that was Connections by James Burke. He would take sort of an event in history here, and event here, and say how they're related, and go through the timeline. Now, it doesn't mean that it goes in a linear time. It can go up, down, disappear, or have gaps, and then, but finally you can get to it. So it could be something like, I'm trying to think now, The Wheel and Madonna, or something. Well, he wouldn't have spoken about Madonna, but we'll just use these as an example, or something like that. And it just, that you had to have something that happened, one thing here, and then that gave way to next thing to happen, and that thing allowed the invention or the application of something else, and so on and so forth. And it doesn't have to be, as I say, linear, and it doesn't have to be something that was made specifically for that. It could have sat around for a long time, then somebody else goes, oh, I know what I can do with that. And then that creates something else, and so on and so forth. The Wheel in Madonna is, forget about that. That's just a bit silly. But it's that kind of thing where he could take the wheel and the mobile phone. And that would be something that he could do. And if there is a connection between those. But anyway, yeah, that's sort of it for my Anthropod tag. And I won't tag anybody for this one. But if you want to do it, then please do. Take care, Buck2. Bye.